Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to Meet the Composer. Brad Hartman.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. How about another round of applause for students?
So we have a series of questions, and at one point we'll open it up to everybody, but we're going to kind of kick it off. Can everyone hear us? We both know we can project, and we can project louder if you need. You're good? Okay.
Yep.
So you want to just dive right in?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. So first question. We'll do an easy one.
Sure.
What instruments do you play?
Well, my first instrument was piano. I started taking lessons about 5 or 6. I started taking lessons. And then in 5th grade, learned the trombone. And then played throughout high school. When I was in 8th grade, I auditioned for the wind ensemble and thought I was all that and a bag of chips, so I didn't practice for the audition. And I got beat out by my cousin for the trombone slot. So the wind ensemble director was also the brass lesson teacher, and he heard me play and called me into his office one day and said, I want you to play the euphonium. And I said, I have no idea what that is. He goes, it's like the little tuba thing. Oh, okay. He hands me a Post-it note, and he said, first position on the slide equals no vowels on that. And he gave me this conversion chart between all the positions on the slide and the valve combinations. And he goes, there's one in the storage room, I'll see you on Monday in wind ensemble. And that's how I started playing the euphonium. So it was kind of a neat story. And, that year we went to NYSBA Majors and played a piece that had a pretty big euphonium solo in it, and I had won the solo. And my band director had said to me, so you're going to go to Allstate next year on euphonium. I went, you're out of your mind. Yeah. I did go to Allstate the next year, at least the solo itself. But it was a cool experience.
That's awesome. So if there's any trombone players out there and you're looking for a gig, you might be able to pick up euphonium.
Yeah, it's a good switch. I still play both.
All right, so piano, trombone, and euphonium.
Yes.
Okay, so next question. What kind of memories does it bring back here in Sayville? So you grew up here in Sayville, you graduated from Sayville High School.
Yes.
This is a real
nice
big. Home thing for you.
I remember signing up for Little League. It was either this room or the room behind here. We had, Sayville Little League signups. My dad had an exhibit with Baffa in this area. I still remember the punch that was made with the sherbet and the ginger ale and all that stuff. And I graduated in 2004. I started really beginning to write music in about 8th grade. The PTA Reflections Contest was a thing, and I had written something and made it to, I think I made it to either the state or the regional level. I made it a couple rounds in. So to be able to premiere the symphony tomorrow at the middle school where I kind of started to really get my feet wet is really meaningful to me. Sayville music has really been the reason why I'm here. High school was tough, and the music department was my home. They all embraced me. They loved me for who I was and what I could and couldn't do. There were some great teachers there, and they made me the musician that I am today. And I'm super grateful to be back in Sayville to present such a really neat opportunity.
Nice. So, if anyone came to the Memorial Day parades or the holiday parades,
the Memorial Day parades, yes. The holiday parade, we always went to visit my dad's family in Pennsylvania, so that was always one that I was excused from, which was, that was always nice. But yeah, we walked down the line, on Main Street, purple jackets. We tried to avoid the horse poop where we could. I was doing all that, and when I was a senior, I knew I wanted to go into music, so I took every possible music course that I could. by the time I graduated, I had been in all 3 bands, both choruses, both orchestras. I had taken all 3 levels of music theory, both levels of electronic music, audio radio engineering, the inner game of music, which was a performance anxiety based class. It was based off of the book The Inner Game of Music, which was really a cool read if you want to check it out. But just amazing opportunities with great people.
So just to add,
Yes.
that book was inspired by one called The Inner Game of Tennis.
Yes, it was. It was. And it was neat. Like, we would do exercises where we would sit outside on the front lawn of the high school, and we were told to close our eyes and pick one sound and to block everything else out. And it was a way to just train yourself to stay in the moment and not let anything else distract you. It's like my son just walked in the door. I was going but it helped me out a lot. I used to get extremely nervous. I remember my level 5 piano solo. I was playing a Scott Joplin rag called The Syncopated Life. And I just remember you could hear more of the pedal slamming up when my foot fell off of the sustain pedal than me actually playing the notes. It became quite rhythmic, actually, as a result. But I used to get so nervous. I used to shake uncontrollably. And that book really helped a lot. And it really, I remember the one teacher would, roll a pumpkin down the aisle of the classroom as you were playing, just to try to set your nerves off a little bit. And it was such a cool class. I'm so glad that we had that in high school.
What was the name of that book?
It was called The Inner Game of Music.
The Inner Game of
Yes,
Music.
it's an easy read, but it's really wonderful. If you play tennis, Inner Game of Tennis. It's the same concept, but it's all about visualizing and allowing yourself to just be in the moment and not let anything else get in your way. So it worked for me.
Okay, next?
Sure,
All right.
go for it. You've got all the questions.
I do.
I hope I have some of the answers.
Let's see if we can throw you a curveball.
Oh, boy.
You teach, you compose, you conduct, and you play instruments. So we talked a little bit about this, but each one requires a different approach, as you're going to, but do you have does any influence the other? Do you use what your knowledge from some to apply the other?
I think that obviously playing an instrument helps you understand how to write for the instrument. And when I was a senior in my undergrad, I wrote a brass quintet, 3-movement brass quintet that we premiered at that recital. Having played all the brass instruments through college, I had a better understanding of what works, what doesn't, how to write for those timbres. Being a teacher, it helps because you're studying scores all the time, and you know what works, you know what the difficulties are for different levels, and I think that's made me more of a versatile composer to write from beginner all the way through collegiate, just knowing what those different abilities have. And then I think being a conductor, having the composition side of things, one of the things that we do as conductors is we have to analyze the score. We have to know what's going on. That's our job, whereas the musicians, they're learning their parts. We have to learn everybody's part and understand how it fits into the big picture. So having the composition background, I think, really helps because you do a full analysis on every piece. You figure out, oh, this is the third of the chord, this is the fifth of the chord, or oh, I understand the form better because I know what the composer was thinking based on the time period they were writing it. So they all kind of, and I find that as I conduct more, I feel like my compositions have evolved. As I teach more, my conducting gets better because there's just that interpersonal relationship. And I think that definitely, it all comes together.
It all comes together.
Yeah,
right?
it does.
Yep, it all influences each other.
Yeah, it really does.
Okay. All right. If not music, what would you want to do for a living?
So I was a very picky eater growing up. I've gotten much better thanks to my wife. But I always felt like I would go into culinary. I love to cook. I'm very organized, so mise en place are a big plus. I always have to prep. I still cook a fair amount at home. So I think for me, being like a culinary instructor, having that educational aspect in there, yeah, I've always wanted to teach. And I think just anything to do with education, but I mean, I like food too, so that's always nice. And if I can make my own food, then no one has to complain that I didn't eat everything on the plate.
Anything else?
I'm missing something on that one.
Quizzing you.
You are quizzing me.
Quizzing
I forgot.
So more
Yeah.
recent, so I'll give you a hint, more recent experience.
Oh, thank you. Yes, that's good. So I last year I had worked at a winery out east, and really became intrigued by the process of growing the grapes, harvesting the grapes, fermenting, all of these things. And there was a point where I did consider getting a sommelier certification and going that route, or a wine educator certification. My wife and I love to go visit different wineries and, you know, try to pair things and pick up the nuances of, well, I taste a little bit of slate here and a little bit of minerality, and well, this must have been grown in this region because of how this tastes. So we geek out to that a lot. So yeah, that was absolutely.
And you can always blend it and pair it with food.
Absolutely, yeah. So they do kind of work hand in hand. Yeah, I mean, it really, there's a theme here, right? I mean, it all works.
What did
It
you
all
bring
works.
for us tonight? A lot. I need beverage.
Next?
Sure,
Okay, so we're gonna dig in a little bit.
okay.
Barbara brought it up before about asking what composers did you study and how have they influenced you?
So when I was in elementary school, I learned about the big three, Bach, Mozart, Beethoven. And I even had books that were way above my age, like it was from Borders, they were meant for like adults. And I used to read them. I still have the books. And I really fell in love with Beethoven. There was just something about the emotion in his music that really intrigued me. And being a pianist, I was very, very intrigued by his piano sonatas, Moonlight being one of them, the Pathétique Sonata. So that was one of my first big influences. But in terms of just music in general, I mean, I grew up in a very musical family. My mom is one of 8 brothers and sisters, and many of them are in education. And of those educators, there are quite a few that are either retired music teachers or they're musicians currently. So I grew up in a very musical household. My parents are artists. I can barely draw a stick figure, but that's okay. I make up for it with the music. At least the art gene is there somewhere. And we would go to church every Sunday, and I would come home from Mass, and I would be able to play every piece that was sung at Mass by ear. And that's when my parents realized, okay, there's something here. Let's explore this a little bit more. And that was really cool. So I would come home, I'd have this ear, I'd listen to something on the radio. You know, I even was able to pick up when my aunt and uncle got married. I figured out their wedding song and played it at their rehearsal dinner. I mean, it was neat to have that ability to hear and play. But then, like growing up, I mean, my parents played a lot of James Taylor, Billy Joel, Carly Simon, the Bangles, and there was just something very soothing about, especially James Taylor, that I think has influenced some of my writing too, in the melodic sense. So that was really neat. And then we were just talking before when Strings Attached was playing the Moldau. My wife and I, in college, we were fortunate enough to tour Poland and Prague for 10 days and perform there. And when we were in Prague, we actually had a chance to go to the Smetana Museum, because he was one of 2 nationalistic composers, the other one being Dvorak. My wife loved Dvorak, still loves Dvorak, and that museum was closed, so we went to the Smetana Museum, and that's where I fell in love with Smetana's music. And that was one of my favorite pieces, so thank you guys for playing that. That was awesome. And then that led to Dvorak, and I mean, everybody knows Dvorak's New World Symphony, but his Eighth Symphony is, I think, even more beautiful. And we just played the first movement of it at our last concert, but the first time I ever heard it was up in Boston. The Boston Symphony Orchestra played it, and hearing that in Symphony Hall with those beautiful acoustics was incredible too. So in terms of classical music, that's definitely where, but also, you know, listening to Leonard Bernstein, listening to Aaron Copland, also there's pieces of that in my music too. Yes,
Contemporary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone in particular, others aside from quizzing you again?
Yeah, I know you are. In the band world, there's a composer whose name is David Gillingham. My college band director did his doctoral dissertation on Gillingham. So we played a lot of his music, and I really enjoyed his style of composition. And I find myself using it a lot. Those rhythmic decelerations and chaturangos that I have in the symphony, I kind of took that from Gillingham. That was his thing. So he was a huge influence and still is in a lot of my music as well. So did I check all the boxes?
You did.
Okay,
You did
good.
a good job. So I'm gonna actually tell a little story if you don't want to get into
No,
this.
go for it, yeah.
All right. So a few weeks ago, my husband and I went to a jazz concert in Pennsylvania, and the band director who wrote most of the music and performed in the band based the music, or all of the titles of the songs were based on disasters that happened in Pennsylvania. Man-made coal mine fires and sinkholes and things. So we left, and talking about it, we were like, well, did you hear that in the music? Were you able to associate and hear the themes of the disaster in the music? And the one that I used was the toxic smog. There was one on toxic smog, and it, didn't sound like it. So we talked about that. So the question is, as you're composing a piece, how do you approach it? What is your process?
So it's different for every single piece. Some pieces I just write to write. Some are assignments because I'm doing my doctoral program. Some of them I've been fortunate enough to be commissioned, and I'm pretty much told this is what it needs to be about. So if it's a commission and it's this is what we want you to write it about. My first symphony was about Long Island, and it was a commission, and the band director said, I just want a piece about Long Island, and the whole theme for the summer concert series was by land, by air, by sea. And I thought, okay, great, I'll just write a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, it'll be 5 minutes and we'll be good to go. It ended up being 3 movements and 21 minutes long, but it really encompassed 3 very different things. So the middle movement is called A Bayman's Prayer, The Hope for Tomorrow. It's all about the fishing industry and the struggles that the fishermen have to go through with all the regulations, and will I have enough fish so that I can make enough money to feed my family, basically. And I went down to the water one day, and I just kind of sat and meditated a little bit, really tried to listen in on the surrounding just aura, and thought about if I were to go out on a fishing boat, what would that sound like? And I wrote a little theme for a bird in the piccolo. The meter was asymmetrical, so you could feel the waves moving back and forth. So things like that. And one of the things that I've been working on in this doctoral program has been to write the aura first and then the melody. And I've always been one to just sit down and write the melody. So it's kind of backwards thinking and backwards engineering, but it works. Other times I will be very symbolic with things. Something that I've done from the earlier stages, and I still do it, is there are 7 different notes in a major scale, if you don't include the top note, which is the same but up an octave. So if you were to number each scale degree 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then make a grid with the American alphabet and line each one up with a letter in the grid, you can write a melody using a scale. So my first piece for band I wrote in memory of my grandfather and also my mentor, Joe Sugar, who was very big with NYSSMA. He was my mentor when I was student teaching, and he suddenly passed away, and then my grandfather passed away about a month later, and it hit me pretty hard. And my way of reflecting on that was to write a piece. I had written this piece about an eagle transcending into the sky, and not so much that we see them going away, but that they become this beautiful bird and this creature, and they just fly towards the heavens. But I couldn't think of how I wanted to start the piece. So I was sitting down at the piano one day, and I drew the grid out, and I spelled their first and last names, and I figured out where would be a good place to pause, to have a cadence. In music we call it a cadence, and I harmonized it in a way so that their names are in the piece, which is pretty neat. And it's one of those things, I know we were talking about it too, I leave this stuff out of the program notes because it's one of those things that it makes it extra special to work with a group and tell them that in person. And it's pretty neat. Even in the symphony, the first part was about Washington's spy ring. And there's a section where it spells out Culper, C-U-L-P-E-R, and then a few measures later it spells out spy ring. And it, nobody knows what it is. It's like, oh, it's a very interesting motif you have there. Yeah, because if you spell it out, it's Culper spy ring.
That's awesome.
So just like little things like that will do it. But yeah, I think that for the most part, I just really try to close my eyes and just be in that moment and see what just comes to me as a piano. A lot of times it'll be through improvisation or whatever, and then I'll just keep repeating the stuff that sticks and then evolve it from there.
How do you know when to end a piece?
That's a great question. Sometimes there's a time restraint that I have with a commission. Sometimes it's whenever I feel the story's over. So in the case of the first symphony, my professor kept listening to it every week, and he kept saying, "There's more to this story. Tell me more. Tell me more." And it became 20 minutes long. It was never meant to be. That group got a great deal on the commission, but the story. There was more to that story, and I'm glad that he convinced me to flesh it out more.
So I'm gonna pop quiz for you.
Go ahead.
So for the symphony we're doing tomorrow,
Yes.
you could mention that there was an unusual place that you were inspired. You got some inspiration for that.
In what, the fourth movement?
In the third.
Oh, the third.
movement
Oh,
of the second
yes.
symphony.
So sometimes ideas come to us in the strangest of places. Many times I'll be in the shower and I'll just hear something in my head, and I have to try to keep singing it in my head until I'm done in the shower, and then I need to write it down, or I'll lose it. Other times I'll be driving home. In fact, the theme from the fourth movement, that slower theme, the fourth movement, I just heard driving home one day, and I just kept singing it for the last 10 minutes of the drive so I wouldn't forget it. And I literally said hi to everybody as soon as I got in the house, and I ran upstairs to the office and started scribbling it down so I didn't forget it. The third movement, I was at the gym, and all these muscular guys are around me lifting these weights, and I've got my 10-pound dumbbell. I'm feeling pretty good. And all of a sudden I hear this theme, and I'm going, oh no, I'm going to forget this. And I had my phone with me because it tracks what I'm lifting and all that stuff. So I literally, in the middle of the gym, pull out my phone, turn on the voice recorder, and I start singing. Bum, 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 bum. And all these people are just kind of like, and I went right back to lifting my weight. Because I would have forgotten it. I still had 45 minutes left. I wasn't giving up the gym time. But yeah, sometimes things happen in the strangest of places, and you don't have a pen and paper to write it down. So thank goodness for technology, and my apologies to Gold's Gym for me singing while everybody was lifting weights.
Well, you gave a little entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely.
They all got to go home and tell
Most
a
of
story
them
about
had
the guy
like
that
the
was singing in
headphones
the
on,
gym
and
today.
they didn't know. It was, they were in their own zone anyway. But yeah, that was probably the most peculiar place I've ever come up with a theme. So that was good.
So moving on to some of the other pieces that you've written.
Sure.
So I have a short list. I don't know if you want to. You kind of touched on them, so I'll list them. And
Yeah.
you want to talk about it?
Sure, absolutely. That's good.
Okay. So Smithtown celebration for the time capsule.
Yes, so I'm the associate conductor with the Smithtown Community Band. I've been with them for, I want to say almost 10 years, maybe more, I forget. But I'm also their composer in residence, and they've asked me to do a couple of commissions. So when the town of Smithtown turned 350 years old, I was asked to write a piece. So I did a lot of research about the town of Smithtown, how it got its border with Richard Smith riding his bull around the perimeter, and wherever the bull could ride, that was the land that they would own. And I wrote this piece. It was very programmatic. It was, fast, slow, fast. The slow section was all about the beautiful preserves and the parks and everything that's in the town of Smithtown. And what we found out was at the end of the concert, they were going to put things in a time capsule. So my score with my markings and a flash drive with a recording of the premiere has been put in a time capsule. And after 50 years, so when Smithtown turns 400, they're going to dig it up, and that becomes part of the Historical Society. So that was a really cool thing. As long as they still have the technology in another 40 years to play a flash drive. But it's pretty neat to see that, and since then the piece has been professionally published as well. But it's a pretty neat thing. It was a really honor to have that happen. So yeah, we even had a brake drum part in there to kind of make the clanking sound of the bell around the bull's neck and everything. It was cool. We had some fun with it. So.
Chasing the Sunrise.
That one was inspired by our beautiful beaches. If you've ever gotten up before dawn and gone to the beach to watch the sunrise, it is gorgeous. This whole piece was about trying to get to the beach before the sun actually came up, and I was literally chasing the sunrise. And it was beautiful. I took pictures, and then I was able to kind of reflect back on that as I was writing. And what I really wanted to capture was when the sun did come up, the warmth of all the colors. Having two parents as artists too, I learned the color wheel before I could read my first book. So it was really important for me to take the warmth of those colors and to put it into the music. So that was a lot of fun. And about a year ago, I was contacted and was told that piece made the North Carolina Bandmasters Association major performance list. It's the equivalent to our NISMA manual here in New York for band. So it is now a adjudicated contest piece for bands in North Carolina. So that was really neat to find out about. So.
Nice. Journey into the Abyss.
So Journey into the Abyss, I taught elementary band for about 5 years, and that was one of the pieces I had written with elementary band in mind. There's not a whole lot of music. It's getting much, much better. We have some outstanding composers that are writing for younger bands. But I really wanted to write something. The publishing company that has been nice enough to publish a lot of my music had emailed me and said, hey, we have a couple of openings. Could you write something on the easier level? So I said, sure. So I wrote this really interesting piece. It was energetic. It, basically started out with one note, the first note of the scale. And then it was the first two notes, and then it was the first three notes. And it built up this whole anticipation, and I was like, all right, we need a catchy title. Journey into the Abyss. Yeah, let's do it. And it was accepted into their catalog, and soon after it was published, it was named to the Bandworks Top 100 list for that year, which was really cool. To see my name up there with incredible composers like Julie Giroux and Sam Hazo and Robert W. Smith, and these are big-time composers. And here's little me in the listing too, so that was a huge honor as well.
Next. Who's at the door?
That was my first and only time I've written for film. This was another commission from the community band, and the other conductor, the theme was it was lights, camera, action, or from sound to stage or whatever. And he wanted to show the importance of music in cinema. And there is plenty of clips on the internet, and I show them to my classes all the time, of here's a scene like Jaws is one of the big popular ones, the scene where they finally see the shark on the boat. And you watch it as it was done in the movies, and then you watch it without any music in the background. You can hear the engine, you can hear the people talking. It's not nearly as scary because the music's not there. There's another one that I show that it's a scene from Pirates of the Caribbean where Johnny Depp is on the boat, and there's 4 or 5 different pieces of music playing in the background to just show you that the music actually dictates the mood. It's not so much what's going on acting-wise. So Bill Lake, the director of the Smithtown Community Band, had said to me, I'd like you to, I'm going to create a 35-second clip of someone ringing a doorbell and this girl coming to the door, and you never see who opens the door, right? You never see who's on the other side of it. And I'd like you to do something like that.
Okay.
So this was an exercise for me to write 4 different moods. One was fear, one was tranquility, one was, I think it was anger. I forget what all of them were. One was like afraid. And it was neat because it really did show how music could change your perception of the same scene even though it was done 4 times. It was one of my least favorite types of things to do, and I was so happy for the opportunity, but I felt like I was in such a small box where I like to just go and see where it develops and to say, here's the scene, and you have to line up things timing-wise. And then when we performed it, we had the countdown timer on the screen behind us like they would in the movies. And I had to match up with that and hope that everybody just played in time so that the hits would line up on time. So it was a really cool experience nonetheless. I don't know how quickly I would do that again. It was a very different experience for me. And it was great though. I loved it.
All right, last one.
Uh-huh.
Symphonic Etude number 1, An October Stroll.
So this one this is a really good story. My wife, Cheryl, who's running around with our youngest son, Christopher, right now, is co-principal flute of the Smithtown Community Band. We met in college. In fact, what got me to talk to her was her low register on the flute, I kid you not. I was like, wow, her low register is incredible. I need to meet her. True story. I can't even make that up. Anyway, so we're playing in the band, I'm conducting, and we were engaged at the time, and we got married in July, and our concerts are in the summer. So I had reached out to the conductor, and I said, look, I would like to write her a piece, but it's going to be her wedding gift, so it needs to be a surprise. And I want to write it about the day we got engaged, which was in October. We went to the Arboretum. As soon as we got out of the car, the bird pooped on me, so it was good luck. It was all about that day. And, but from my perspective, so you could hear the nervousness and the jitteriness and how when she said, well, first she said, are you sure? I think that was her first, something like, it wasn't a clear yes, and I just kind of looked at her and then she said yes. Thank goodness for that. But just you can hear in the piece just this flood of emotion of happiness and celebration. But clearly I had to disguise this thing because she was playing in the band and I couldn't give it away. And anytime that I write music, she is my best critic. She will be the first one to tell me, this sounds like garbage, started from scratch. No, she would never say that. But she's very honest with me. She'd be the first to say, I like this is okay, and I'll go, all right, what needs to change, And I knew that if I didn't let her listen to it during the composition process, she would know something's up. Why am I being so secretive? So I let her listen to it, and I said, what do you think? And her first response to it was, well, there's not a whole lot for the flutes in this. And I just looked at her and I said, well, sometimes it's not about the flutes. So we rehearsed it, and I had to give it this very generic title, Symphonic Etude number 1. And no one in the band other than the other conductor knew. So we get to the concert, and I'm talking about how, Cheryl and I are getting married this weekend, and I said, I have to tell you, I've been living a lie. And I thought someone was going to throw up because it was just the tension there. It was like, wait, where is he going with this? And I said, this piece is not really called Symphonic Etude No. 1. It's called An October Stroll, and it's my wedding gift. And someone at that concert recorded it without me knowing. And during our wedding reception, had the DJ play it, which was really cool. So that was a very special thing, and was very lucky to have that also published after the fact as well. But yeah, that's a piece that will always be near and dear to my heart. So.
All right, so now we have, this is a little bit of a bigger question. We made a whole section about lament.
Yes. So we talked a little bit about how important the music program at Sayville was for me. And I was, when I say I was lucky, I was beyond lucky. I knew everyone in the music department, faculty-wise, and they all knew me, for better or for worse. They knew me. I was always down there. And I wasn't really in orchestra except when we would combine, the wind instruments for full orchestra. And the orchestra teacher at the time, his name was Jim Lawler. Jim lived in Bayport. He taught in Sayville for pretty much his whole career, if not all of his career. And he saw something very special in me. He saw my frustrations and all the difficulties that I had getting through high school. And he was like a mentor to me. There was one day I missed the bus, and my mom had a faculty meeting. She couldn't pick me up, and he said to me, "Come on, I'll drive you home." This is when you could do that. Okay, this is when it was okay. He drove me home, and he thought nothing of it. He was huge. He even wrote out a solo euphonium part for Irish Tune, Danny Boy, because he wanted to feature me because he loved how I sounded on euphonium. Euphonium's not usually in a symphony orchestra, so for him to write that for me was really special. He was the pit director. He was just so understanding of the many struggles I had in high school. So when I was in college, I found out he had stage 4 lung cancer, and he had passed away around Christmas time that year, my second year in college. And I never really had a chance to pay my respects or say goodbye. So what I did was I did what I usually do. I went to the piano, and the piano was a place for me to express my own feelings to myself more than anything. So I had sat down there, and I just really thought about him and everything he had done for me as a musician and as a student, as a person. And I had written this piece called Lament. And we had an alumni recital at the high school, and I played it for the first time for the public, and there was not a dry eye in that auditorium because we all knew Jim, and we all understood what it meant. We all felt it. Fast forward a year or two later, and I said, I really want to do something more with this. And he was an orchestra player. He was a bassist. And I felt that it was really important to write it for string orchestra. It's the only piece I've ever written for string orchestra. So I had self-published it, and I had never performed it myself. I had some friends look over it, help me out with bowings, and I self-published it, and I get an email one day from this woman in Baltimore. And she said, "I just have to let you know, I purchased Lament, and we just played it at a PTA reflection ceremony." And I'm like, wow, full circle now, right? And she said it was the perfect piece as background music because the students were reflecting on their favorite teachers and how much they meant to them. And I went, wow, imagine if, I'm sure Mr. Lawler was hearing that. So once I started to work with this publishing company, Tux People's Music, I sent them a whole bunch of stuff, and they took a look at Lament and immediately went, "We're taking this in our catalog. We want this." Okay, fine. So they publish it. I get an email a couple months later. Lament has been chosen to be performed at the Midwest Clinic, which is it's an international music festival for band and orchestra. And they do a new music reading session for band, orchestra, I think for chorus, I'm not sure. Some editor found this and said, we're going to show this to the world. And this piece was played at the Midwest Clinic, I think it was maybe 3 years ago. So that was really special. And then this past summer, I had the chance to conduct a string group to go with the community band. We were creating a community orchestra. And that was the first time I've ever conducted it myself. I've heard it played once before that, and some of the members of this group actually played it, but it was my first time conducting it, and my only time conducting it. So that was very special for me to be able to really have that closure with that piece to bring it to life.
Okay, so that takes us to our break. We are going to hear Lament. Strings Attached has been rehearsing it,
Yes.
and I believe you are going to conduct it. So
Yes.
I'm going to get out of the way.
Okay. Sounds good. And I went, this was cool. I think I want to write another one. And I think for me it was, and then this kind of ties into one of the questions we had, but that's okay. For me, BAFA has done a lot for me as a person, and we'll get more into that with that question, but this was an opportunity for me to connect with the orchestra on a level that most people don't have the opportunity to. And by doing that, I knew the strengths of the orchestra, I knew what we enjoyed playing, so I tried to write a symphony that was in a late romantic style and form. So that was the basis of it. And then, I thought about, well, what does the orchestra mean to me? What does BAFA mean to me? And I thought about 4 words, which were virtue, peace, joy, and exaltation. And those are the names of each of the movements in Latin. But and that was kind of the inspiration for that.
What inspired you to make the symphonies?
So the first symphony was a commission. It was not supposed to be a symphony, right? It was supposed to be a short work, but it became a symphony because there were 3 different stories to tell. The third movement of that symphony, by the way, was all about the spirit of aviation, since we have such a rich aviation history on Long Island, where you're almost like in a fighter plane and you ascend to different altitudes. And at these different altitudes, it's not always peaceful. Sometimes you get into a little bit of trouble. So there's some perilous moments, and then there's a section where you get to such a high of an altitude that you're practically up into the heavens. And I was able to incorporate the Air Force hymn into that. And I brought back the bird theme from the second movement, because you were up so high, you were amongst the birds. So that was really cool, too, to throw that in there. And the second movement was basically my way of showing my gratitude to BAFA and the BAFA Symphony Orchestra.
Any other questions?
What's the most unique place you've ever played at?
Oh, that's good. Well, I've been lucky enough to perform at Carnegie 3 times. My 4th time will be next month, which is really great. That's always cool when you go out on stage and you just look up and up and up and up, and you realize this is where Leonard Bernstein made his debut as a conductor, right? I've been lucky enough to perform at Lincoln Center, singing, actually, in college. We did an opera called Il Piccolo Marat, and I was in the chorus for that. And I was in the chorus section, and I went, so Leonard Bernstein stood there at one point, and Phil Smith, principal trumpet player, sat over there, and Joe Alessi sits right there. Probably empties his spit right there. I was like fanboying like crazy over that. In terms of unique, I mean, I've been lucky enough to play in France, in Switzerland. I think for me, being on the main stage at the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland was unique in a good way. Like, it was incredible that we weren't supposed to play there. There's a story behind this, but the jazz director, when I was there, sent in a tape for us to get the main stage, except he didn't send in our tape. He sent in a tape from the University of Alabama when he taught there about 10 years prior, and that band was cooking. But labeled it as the C.W. Post Jazz Ensemble, and sure enough, we got the main stage. And that was kind of his last laugh. Unfortunately, he never had a chance to see it. He also had cancer. He passed away of melanoma that semester. But he was a jokester. And he would, like, you thought you had a glass of water, but it wasn't water. And you'd go to take a big swig, and it would burn. And he'd be sitting in the back, and he'd be laughing. He was a jokester. He'd start a piece, he'd walk away, he wouldn't come back for the end of it. Somebody else had to end the piece. That's just who he was, and we loved him dearly. So this was his last laugh, was to get us on the main stage at the University of Alabama's expense. So it was great. That was pretty cool. On that same trip, when we were in Switzerland, we played at a small school, and it was jazz ensemble, jazz combo, vocal jazz. And we found that it was some guy's birthday in the audience. So at the end of the concert, we decided we were going to play Happy Birthday, and we were going to kind of jam out to it and improvise over it. Well, the guy was so touched that he invited all of us to follow him in the tour bus back to his place. He owned an inn in the Swiss Alps, and his family got up and made us cheese fondue in the Swiss Alps. It was the coolest thing in the world, but because we played Happy Birthday for this guy, it was awesome. So, I mean, I don't think I'll ever have a chance like that again. That was really cool.
Was there a piece you wrote for perform?
Yes, I had written just a blues tune, and the jazz combo really liked it, so we played it on the main stage at the Montreux Jazz Festival, which was really cool. So I have a picture of me somewhere on the main stage with the Montreux Jazz Festival sign behind me, and it was gorgeous. You looked out at Lake Geneva, you saw the Swiss Alps. It was absolutely picturesque. It was incredible.
Any other questions? Oh,
Go ahead, Owen.
go ahead.
What inspired you to be a composer?
Aw.
That's a great question. Part of it was I loved playing music, and I would just kind of write stuff based on other stuff. I'd write my own versions of La Bamba when I was in 2nd grade. I did a little whatever thing on that. I think one of the big things for me was the movie Mr. Holland's Opus. I wanted so badly to teach music, and I saw the power of music and teaching music, and how it didn't matter what grade level or what you could be teaching to people that just needed it to graduate, but you could connect with them in ways that no one else in that building could. I'll never forget, there was a line in there, "Play me the sunset." And the clarinet player played the sunset. And when he retired, it was this huge celebration because all of those people came back to play for him. And that was beautiful. And he was composing. And that's, when I watched that movie, I was really starting to experiment with composition too. Because I wanted to be, I never taught driver's ed, but I wanted to be Glenn Hartman. So, great question. Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right.
Did you write more than 2 symphonies?
No, not yet at least.
I know.
I think I'm taking a break from symphonies. But I wrote both of them within 12 months. So that was pretty crazy. And then I wrote a big band piece in the middle of writing the second symphony. So there was a lot of different things happening simultaneously.
Like
So
reading multiple books at the
yeah,
same
it was a little. I had never done that before, but it was interesting to do, to try to compartmentalize different things. So.
All right, last call. All
What
right, our last question.
was your first piece that you wrote?
The first piece that I wrote that was actually performed was I wrote a chorale for trombone quartet when I was in college. And then I used that chorale in the third movement of that brass quintet that I wrote for my senior recital. So that was kind of neat. All right,
Move on?
let's move on.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, what was your inspiration for the symphony? I know we kind of started and touched on it before.
Yeah, so I had gone through a very rough patch a few years ago professionally, and really questioned a lot about myself, my integrity, my abilities as a teacher, as a musician, as a conductor. And John actually had reached out to me and said, you know, I play in this orchestra, and we're looking for a conductor. Let me send you the stuff. And I went, I don't know. I don't know if I'm cut out to do this. I'm a band guy. Strings, don't take this the wrong way. Strings are expensive firewood. I love it. Yeah. So we may be postponing tomorrow's concert. But I didn't really know much about strings, and I felt really out of place. So I was like, I don't know. I'll put in for it, but I'm not the guy for the job. And I get called by Andrea. We met in the gallery, and Jen was there. Tina Barkin, who was the orchestra manager at the time, was there. Was anybody else there at the time? It might have just been the four of us.
I think it was
Yeah.
about, yeah.
I had known Tina for a while. I had known Jen. I just didn't know Andrea. And I thought, well, this is going to go one of two ways. It's either going to go really well, or they're going to remember me, and it's not going to go very well. I don't know. And I was asked to take the first concert, and I was hired on the spot to do the first concert. And I was nervous, very, very nervous. I was in between jobs. I was trying to find my way, and as much as I found the orchestra found me. And it's something that I won't forget. It's certainly changed my life and has kind of reaffirmed. We did the first concert together, and it was a tough program. It was a very tough program. Enigma Variations was on the program. It was hard. And the orchestra played really well. But I left that concert not knowing if I was going to conduct again, because I wasn't sure. I didn't know. I kind of just disappeared into the abyss, and that was that. And right around New Year's Eve, Andrea reaches out to me and she goes, "Hey, can we meet? I want to talk to you." And I'm going, "Oh, this is going to be the talk of, they already had somebody lined up for the second concert. I didn't know about the third concert, and I figured this was going to be the, hey, listen, we appreciate you getting us to the first concert, but, no thanks." And we sat down at Starbucks, and she said, we'd like to look no further. We'd like to keep you and make you full-time on board as our music director. And I must have had a look on my face, because the first thing she said to me was, "Are you okay?" Because I was in shock that, an orchestra that I had just met 3 months prior believed in me so much and were so adamant that they wanted the deal done right there. And that is something I will always, always remember, and I will never take for granted. So I felt that the best way to connect with a group of musicians is to do a composition with them. And I felt that this symphony was completely justified, because I would not have the balance in my life without this orchestra and without Bafa. So, as I was saying before, I thought about what Bafa means to me, And if I had to summarize it in 4 words, how I feel after rehearsals, most rehearsals, virtuous, I feel virtue. I feel peace, knowing that I'm doing something that's worthwhile, that I'm making a difference, that I feel value in myself because of the orchestra and how they make me feel. Joy, and then exaltation, to just have that extreme sense of elation and happiness that you can only get when you make music with incredible people. So that's kind of how that all came to be. And I had said to Andrea, hey, what do you think about this crazy idea? I'm thinking about writing a piece for the orchestra. I've never written for full orchestra before in my life. And she said, I think this would be perfect. So Andrea got little snippets along the way. Some other people got some snippets along the way. And then the 4th movement was the trickiest. It's the longest. The symphony is 40 plus minutes long. It's a beast. But it's my heart and soul poured onto the page, truthfully. There's a lot of symbolism in the symphony. There's a lot of things for the violins. Andrea is one of our violinists. Jen's one of our violinists. Tina is one of our horn players, so there's a lot of stuff written for horn. I really tried to symbolize and pay homage to the people that brought me in, embraced me, and made sure I stayed, which was huge. But the 4th movement, we were approaching Christmas break. Our first rehearsal for the symphony was January 2nd, and I had about 2 minutes worth of music written, and I didn't like it, so I threw it all out. And I wrote the 4th movement, which is 18 and a half minutes long, in 30 hours. Thank goodness for my wife being incredible and looking after our 2 boys and allowing me to just crank this out. Sometimes I just need to sit and go until I'm done, and sometimes I can take a break and come back, and sometimes I need the break. But for this, I just needed to get it out. And I think the 4th movement turned out pretty well for 30 hours. Did I miss anything?
No.
Okay, good. I'm just making sure.
Please,
All right, good.
Excellent.
Good.
All right, last question.
All right.
Looking forward, are you working on any new projects?
So I really fell in love with the 2nd movement of this symphony, which is called Pacem, meaning peace. When I had let my wife listen to it, the first thing she said to me was, it sounds like a prayer. It's just so calming. And I went, thank you, peace, we got it. That's the title of that. I love it so much that I'm working on a wind band or wind ensemble transcription that's going to be premiered this summer. So that'll be fun. Other than that, I actually, since we've talked, started, there's one more that I'm doing, that after this past weekend chairing the New York State Honor Band up in Syracuse, it made me realize just how incredible the music world is and how fortunate I am to be a part of it. And how as conductors, as composers, as teachers, we often forget the value we hold, and that is something that I'm working at, getting better at. So I'm working on a piece right now. It's just very basic sketches, but it's all about, it's called The Words in Which We Cannot Speak. And it's the thoughts that we have that, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe, there's always someone better out there. And it's being able to express that in a way that at the end of the day, it is worth it. And we are good at what we do. So it was a very big thing. Mental health is a very big thing. Social emotional learning is a very big thing. And I feel like there's more of us that deal with that than we mention. And for me, that was a way of kind of going down that road in a way that other people could resonate with too. So those are my 2 current projects. But that's all I really have on the docket right now. Yeah. I'm just trying to enjoy the conducting aspect for a little bit. Yeah, I mean the transcription is taking up a good amount of time too. But it's all worth it. So,
Well, that was our last question.
well, I would like to just say a huge thank you to everybody that came out tonight. Thank you for standing room only, really.
Yes.
I mean, never in a million years did I think that I'd be able to talk about my own stuff. And thank you to Strings Attached again for playing so beautifully. And Andrea, thank you for hosting. And Donna, thank you so much for everything you've done as president of BAFA and inviting me and encouraging me to do all this stuff. I have one little thing that I would like to just take out of my lovely bag here, and this is just a little thank you to Andrea. This is the Second Symphony score. It's a book. So this is the blood, sweat, and tears of what this orchestra means to me, and I am extremely grateful and honored to be able to present it tomorrow at Sable Middle School, where I was a student. So thank you everybody for being here tonight. We have some wonderful refreshments, and a huge thank you to my family, my aunts and uncles, my parents, my kids, my wife, for being here and making this really
I think I'm the one that should be in this picture.
Oh, that's
Cheryl, you wanna come out?
Yes, please. I have to introduce. So thanks everybody. Please help yourself to refreshments, and we really hope to see you tomorrow at the concert.
At 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
People are
Yes.
trying to get
Oh.
past.
Yes.